the invisible power that changes everything. In a world that rewards instant reactions, the real strength lies in intentional silence. Every time you react without thinking, you hand the steering wheel of your mind to someone else. They say the loudest person wins, but the Stoics knew better. It's not the volume of your voice that holds power, it's your ability to not be moved. Let me ask you something. What if you could feel everything without being ruled by any of it? What if your emotions didn't control your choices, but served as quiet messengers you could listen to and then decide how to respond? That's not emotional suppression. That's emotional mastery. The Stoics taught us a truth most people forget. We are not disturbed by things, but by our judgments about them. This is a reminder. Your peace doesn't come from controlling life. It comes from controlling your response to life. And that is where your unshakable power begins. Most people think they're reacting to what's happening now, but what they're really reacting to is everything they've never healed from. That surge of anger you felt during a small disagreement, it wasn't about the disagreement. It was about every time you felt unheard as a child. Every moment you swallowed your truth to avoid conflict. Every time you needed to scream but stayed silent instead. Emotional reactions are echoes, old signals being replayed in a new setting. The Stoics understood this with brutal clarity. Epictetus wrote, "You are disturbed not by events, but by your judgment of them." But let's go deeper. Judgment is not just a thought, it's a wound. It's how your nervous system has been trained to protect you, to flinch at rejection, to shut down at criticism, to explode at even the scent of betrayal. And so, the smallest comment can shatter your peace. The most harmless silence can feel like abandonment. Because the wound was never about them. It was always you, bleeding under the surface. You want to be calm? Start by telling the truth. You're not angry. You're hurt. You're not cold. You're afraid. You're not mean. You're still trying to protect that 8-year-old version of you who never got to feel safe. This is where real Stoic power begins. Not in pretending you feel nothing, but in facing exactly what you feel without letting it own you. Because what you don't understand will control you. And what you don't name will keep naming you in every relationship you ruin, every reaction you regret. So here's the challenge. Rewrite your emotional map. Start with this question. What patterns always throw you off balance? What type of people pull reactions out of you before you can think? Who are the faces that keep appearing in your internal battlefield long after they're gone? You might discover that the person who hurt you years ago still has your emotional leash, that your father's silence is still screaming through your need for validation, that your mother's judgment still lives in the way you criticize yourself. The Stoic doesn't run from this awareness. He sits with it. He studies it. He owns it so no one else can. Try this tonight. A trigger journal. Just 5 minutes. Write down one moment that shook your emotional state today. What happened? Who was involved? How did your body respond? Tight chest, shallow breath. What does that moment remind you of? Deep down, this isn't therapy. It's warfare on unconscious suffering. You're not trying to feel better. You're trying to become free. free from the emotional puppeteers who no longer deserve your energy, free from the trap of thinking you're too sensitive or too broken. You are not broken. You are unexamined. And the examined life, as the Stoics believed, is the only one worth living. So next time your emotions rise like a wave, don't suppress it. Don't explode. Observe it like a commander scanning the battlefield. Where is this coming from? Is this mine, or did I inherit it? Is this now, or is this then? This is how you stop being a slave to your wounds and start becoming a master of your peace. And that's the kind of man who becomes unshakable. You don't need a therapist to tell you something's wrong. Your body already has. Way before your mind crafts a single sentence, your body has whispered the truth. Not in language, not in logic, but in tight shoulders, in a stomach that knots itself without warning, in the way your breath shortens when you hear their name. Most people live neck up. They think their way through life, overthinking, overanalyzing, and then overreacting, because what they never learned is how to listen below the surface. The Stoic, on the other hand, lives fully embodied. He does not just analyze what he feels. He senses it. He observes the tremor before the quake. And because of that, he doesn't get caught in the storm. Think about those moments when something in you shifted, even before your brain caught up. That drop in your chest before hearing bad news. The rising heat in your face when someone crosses a line. The constriction in your throat when you sense someone pulling away. These aren't coincidences. These are signals. Your body is a battlefield of stored memory. Muscles carry moments you never processed. Your breath patterns echo the tension of past wounds. Tightness isn't just physical, it's psychological residue. But most people, they don't speak this language, so they keep reacting to shadows, to echoes, to ghosts from their past, wearing present-day faces. The Stoics trained differently. They weren't emotionless statues. They were war generals of the self, disciplined, present, able to recognize that every spike of anger, every swell of fear, every pull of grief starts in the body before it ever reaches the tongue. Seneca once said, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." Yet even as he acknowledged suffering, he refused to let it rule him. Why? Because he traced each emotion to its root. Anger wasn't just a thought, it was tension building in the hands. Fear didn't just live in imagination, it pulsed in the lungs. Grief didn't just ache in the heart, it sat like stone in the belly. That's where power lies. In mapping your internal terrain before life sends you into battle. In learning where your triggers live before they ambush you. Picture this, you walk into a room, the one person who tests your patience is sitting right there. Before a single word is spoken, your jaw locks, your shoulders draw up, your stomach begins to churn. War hasn't started on the outside, but the battlefield is alive within you. And now imagine this. You pause. You notice. You ask yourself, what am I feeling? Where in my body is this showing up? What might this moment be connected to? That pause, just 3 seconds, breaks the chain reaction. It separates impulse from intention. You step out of the storm and into awareness. Most people don't fall apart because of the present moment. They unravel because their body is carrying decades of unfelt emotion, tightness never questioned, breaths never fully released, pain never spoken, only stored. Until one day, someone says the wrong word, and the dam bursts. The Stoics didn't need neuroscience to know this. They trained their breath like warriors, sharpened swords. They slowed their pulse like monks still water. They mastered sensation so they could master the self. So, next time you feel anger rise, don't yell, don't run, don't suppress it. Instead, sit with it. Feel it where it lives in your fists, your chest, your neck. Breathe into it, not to fix it, but to observe, as if you were watching a storm roll in from the highest mountain, unmoved, unshaken, safe. This is not avoidance. It's alchemy. You are transmuting chaos into clarity, not by thinking harder, but by sensing deeper. And if you want to make this a practice, do this tonight. Before bed, ask yourself 3 simple questions. What emotion came up the strongest today? Where did I feel it in my body? And what memory might it be linked to? Then write it down. Not to solve, not to judge, but to witness. Because here's the truth. What you fully feel without resistance sets you free. What you ignore becomes your prison. You are not your anger, not your fear, not even your sadness. You are the observer of them all. But that observer must be trained, and the training doesn't begin in the mind. It begins in the body. Feel the signal. Name the sensation. Let the wave rise and fall without jumping on it. And soon, you'll notice something miraculous. You no longer get swept away by every emotional current. You become the one who stands still, even when the storm howls. That's the beginning of true power. The kind you don't need to prove. The kind no one can take away, because it lives within your skin, beneath your breath, and inside a spine that no longer bends to chaos. Unmoved, unshaken, stoic. Most people think power is about control, controlling the narrative, controlling other people, controlling the room. But the Stoics knew something different. True power isn't about domination. It's about self-possession. And that starts with one ability, the ability to pause, to hold yourself still, when everything in you is screaming to react. You know the moment I'm talking about. It's subtle, but it hits hard. Someone says something sharp. Maybe it's a jab disguised as a joke. You hear the tone. You see the smirk. It lands like a slap on your ego. Your heart rate spikes. Your jaw tightens. Your hands curl slightly. Instinctively, there's this raw, electric charge inside you. The urge to clap back, to say something cutting, to show them they picked the wrong person to play with. But that moment is not just tension. It's a crossroads. Because what you do next writes the story. Not just of the situation, but of who you are. Most people react. They let the surge take over. And in doing so, they hand over the one thing they should protect at all costs, their peace. The Stoics had a wordless rule. If your emotions are leading, you are not. There's a gap between what happens to you and what you choose to do. That space, that sacred pause, is the arena where character is forged. It's not just self-control, it's self-command. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength begins the moment you don't let life pull your strings. So what does that look like? Let me take you into a real-world moment. Picture this. You're in a meeting. A colleague feels threatened by your presence. They crack a joke, a clever insult, just vague enough to be defensible. The room chuckles, not knowing where to look. You feel the heat rise behind your face. You want to respond. You need to reclaim ground. But instead, you breathe. You don't react. You let the pause wrap around you like armor. You ask yourself 3 silent questions. Is this actually a threat or just noise? Will responding serve me or my pride? What would a king do, not a soldier, but a sovereign? And suddenly, your posture shifts. Not from weakness, from awareness. You look at the one who provoked. You nod. You smile. And you say, "Nothing." And in that moment, they realize you can't be moved. Not by words. Not by bait. You're not in the game they're playing. And that's terrifying, because it means you play on a different level. This isn't about being passive. This is about being unshakable. The sacred pause is not inaction. It's strategy. It's what separates impulse from intention, ego from mastery. You see, most of the damage we create in life doesn't come from what others do to us. It comes from our own overreaction. We text too fast, speak too sharp, break things we later wish we hadn't, all because we didn't take 3 seconds. Just 3. That's all it takes to go from emotionally hijacked to mentally sovereign. And once you master that pause, everything changes. Your energy becomes harder to read. Your presence becomes heavier in a good way. People can feel you thinking before you speak. And that makes them pause too. That's how influence is built. Not by force, but by stillness. Not by noise, but by restraint. There is real power in not responding, because silence, when intentional, isn't emptiness. It's full of meaning. It says, I don't need to prove anything. I already own myself. So the next time the fire rises in your chest, the next time someone tries to provoke, to pull you off balance, pause. Let your breath be the boundary. Let your awareness be the shield. And let your stillness speak louder than your words ever could. Because in that pause, you don't just hold back. You rise above. And that is the mark of a mind no one can control. A king doesn't answer to jesters. And your power is in remembering that. Most people think mindfulness is something that only happens in perfect conditions. They imagine it lives on a meditation cushion, in a quiet room, with incense burning, eyes closed, legs crossed, a ritual removed from real life. But that's not how the Stoics saw it. They didn't retreat into caves or monasteries. They stood in the noise, the mess, the pressure, and chose presence there. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free than within yourself." He wasn't referring to some mountaintop temple. He meant the bathhouse, where the air was hot and voices louder. He meant the palace, with its burdens of leadership and politics. He meant the busy Roman market, where chaos ruled. Mindfulness for the Stoics wasn't about escape. It was about entry into life as it is, not pushing discomfort away, but standing in it, with clarity, with calm. So what does this actually look like for you? It's when you pause while pouring your morning coffee, and for just a second, you feel the weight of the cup, the scent rising, the warmth seeping into your palm. It's when you wash your hands, not just as a task, but as a moment of reconnection. The sound of the water, the cool sensation, the return to breath. I am here. I am breathing. Nothing else exists. That's a reset. That's nervous system alchemy. Because when your awareness anchors to now, it severs the spiral of anxiety, anger, regret. Let's make it real. You're in a conversation. Tension builds. Someone drops a passive-aggressive comment, just sharp enough to trigger you. Your chest tightens. Your mind flares. Say something back. Defend yourself. Prove your point. But then, you don't. You observe. You become the watcher. You breathe. Slowly, you feel your feet. You feel your body. And you remember you have a choice. Instead of reacting, you respond. That 1 second of space, that's everything. That's power. Not from control, but from clarity. Here's something deeper. The Stoics practiced in silence, without a single word spoken. A Stoic anchor. Every time your hand touches your chest, right over your heart, let it be a ritual, a signal to return, a whisper to yourself. I am here. I am safe. I choose presence. It doesn't need incense. It doesn't need chanting. It just needs you. And here's a challenge that will either reveal your peace or expose your addiction to noise. Disconnect to reconnect. Set a timer, 30 minutes. No phone, no music, no scrolling, just stillness. Let it feel awkward. Let it stretch until it becomes sacred. Because here's the brutal truth. If you can't sit still with yourself for 30 minutes, the world will always have a lever on your nervous system. Mindfulness in the mundane isn't about being serene all day. It's about returning again and again when the storm comes. You are not the stress. You are the awareness holding it. You are not the story. You are the silent space the story appears in. And that is where the strength lives. Let your morning routine become a dojo. Let traffic be your teacher. Let the act of waiting in line become an invitation. Because when the ordinary becomes sacred, the world no longer shakes you. You stand still, while everything else moves. In a world that profits from your confusion, clarity becomes a rebellion. Self-awareness isn't just some meditative practice. It's not reserved for monks in temples or philosophers in scrolls. It's for you, right now, in this very life where emotions spike fast, triggers hit hard. And people play games you didn't ask to be part of. Because let's be brutally honest, if you don't know how your own mind works, someone else will run it for you. They'll use your wounds as buttons, your fears as maps, your silence as opportunity, and you won't even notice, because you never paused long enough to ask, what's actually going on inside me? That's where Stoicism doesn't just guide, it confronts. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But that kind of strength isn't automatic. It requires a mirror, a raw one, the kind that doesn't flatter, the kind that reflects even what you've buried. Self-awareness is learning to spot the shadow before it turns into sabotage. Let me tell you a story. A man gets criticized in a meeting. He smiles on the outside, stoic. Right, but hours later, he snaps at his partner over nothing. Not because of her tone, but because his ego was bruised earlier, and he didn't face it. He thought he was in control, but he was just emotionally delayed. That's not stoicism. That's denial. Real stoic power is not suppression. It's translation. You feel anger, translate it. What value was threatened? You feel envy, translate it. What part of yourself are you neglecting? You feel shame, translate it. Are you living by someone else's metric? This is why emotional self-mastery starts with brutal honesty, not for performance, not to look calm, but to become unshakable from within. So here's a weapon most people never wield, the daily Stoic debrief. It's simple. Every night before your head hits the pillow, write down 3 moments from your day that stirred something in you. Not just anger. It could be confusion, sadness, even pride. For each moment, ask yourself, what exactly triggered this reaction? What story did I tell myself in that moment? What would a wiser, future version of me have done differently? That 5-minute audit will start rewiring your brain. You'll start noticing your patterns, the way your pride masks fear, the way your overthinking hides your need for control, the way your silence isn't always strength sometimes. It's fear in disguise. But now, you're not blind to it. And once you see it, you can lead it. You can shift. Self-awareness becomes tactical. You stop being baited into arguments. You stop chasing validation. You stop reacting just because something poked, a childhood bruise. Instead, you respond, like a general, not a pawn. Because here's the truth. What you don't own will own you. But what you name, utame, what you understand, you command. That's why I want you to remember this line. Know yourself so well that no one else can weaponize your emotions against you. That's what makes you dangerous in the best way. Unpredictable to manipulators, calm in chaos, untouchable by noise, rooted like an oak because you've met your own storms. This is the hidden superpower of Stoicism. Not that you don't feel, but that you feel deeply without drowning, because you've done the quiet, brutal, powerful work of knowing who the hell you are. And that, my friend, is something no one can take from you. Reclaim your peace. There's a moment small and silent that decides everything. Someone says something sharp. They roll their eyes. They dismiss you. Or maybe worse, they ignore you completely. And in that instant, your nervous system lights up. Your heart speeds. Your jaw clenches. Your ego loads its weapon. But before you fire back, before you storm out, clap back, or shut down, there is a moment, a sliver of space, a breath between stimulus and response. And that space is your power. The Stoics understood this better than anyone, that we are not disturbed by events, but by the opinions we form about them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In a world obsessed with reaction, silence is subversive, and choice, it's revolutionary. People will do what they do. They'll betray, disappoint, attack, provoke. But how you interpret and respond, that's the arena of sovereignty. That's where peace is reclaimed, not from the outside, but from within. Blaming others feels righteous in the moment. It gives you a sense of moral leverage, but it's a false win. Because every time you blame, you outsource your inner life to external chaos. You become a puppet of the very people you want to be free from. True power begins with radical responsibility, not responsibility as guilt, but as authorship. You step back. You zoom out. You say, "This moment is mine. I will choose what energy I bring into it." One Stoic-inspired practice for this is the radical responsibility protocol. No steps. No checklists. Just 3 quiet shifts of awareness. First, pause the reflex. Catch the rising heat. Let it swell, but don't act from it. Second, widen the frame. Imagine you're viewing the situation from a bird's eye, detached from your pride. What would your wiser self see here? And third, ask the soul-aligning question, what can I choose that protects both my peace and my integrity? Sometimes the answer is to walk away. Sometimes it's to speak, but without venom. And sometimes it's to forgive, not for their sake, but for your own freedom. Because forgiveness is not weakness. It's not surrender. It's strategy. It's choosing not to let your nervous system be a prisoner of someone else's immaturity. It's not saying, "You were right." It's saying, "You no longer control how I feel or how I live." This is what reclaiming peace really looks like. Not a passive Zen calm, but a disciplined, intentional response in a moment that begged you to lose yourself. And every time you choose that response, you strengthen your inner fortress. You signal to your mind, we are in control. We do not break. Because in the end, your greatest source of power isn't what happens to you, but who you decide to become in the face of it. Not reacting doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've become dangerous, but in the most disciplined way. In a world that rewards speed, volume, and instant gratification, you chose stillness. You paused. You observed. You didn't let the outside world pull strings on your nervous system. And that is rare power. Because the real battlefield is never out there. It's always inside. And when you master the war within, no one out there can move you. Every deep breath you take, every second you choose not to explode, every moment you name your emotion without letting it own you, is a brick laid in the foundation of an unshakable mind. This is how you build quiet strength, not overnight, but breath by breath, decision by decision, silently, relentlessly. There will still be moments that shake you. You're human, but even then you'll learn to recognize the storm and stand still in the center of it. That's the Stoic way. To feel deeply, but not be dominated by feeling. To act deliberately, not impulsively. To choose your response, and in doing so, reclaim your peace. So, if today's message stirred something in you, if it helped you pause and see your reactions in a new light, then take a moment right now, not to react, but to reflect. And if someone you know is caught in emotional chaos, share this with them, not to preach, but to offer them what you're slowly building, the strength of the unmoved mind. If this message gave you something to think about, take a breath and share it with someone who needs it. Like, subscribe, and join this journey of mastering the quiet strength within, because power isn't loud and peace isn't passive. They're both found in the mind that refuses to be moved by chaos. That mind can be yours.